Welcome to Love Powered Life, a place where we engage in thought provoking, soul evoking, and heart opening conversation. My guest today is Val, a beautiful human being that I had a pleasure of working with as when she was an acupuncturist. I don't know if you still are, if you still practice, but I think once you are, you always are. A beautiful, gifted soul, a beautiful, gifted human being with a heart of gold. And I'm so happy to have you here. You've always inspired the level of presence and stillness and calm and peace within me. And that's how I see you. So, will you please share a little bit with us about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tetiana. This is such a wonderful meeting and congruence between us. And it's so nice to meet in a different capacity now and seeing you on your own journey and where you've been and where you're now. It's great. It's great. Marvelous. Really happy that you're doing this, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So thank you. I am a trained acupuncturist. I'm currently living in Berlin. I'm not practicing here in Germany. But before I was an acupuncturist, I also danced for a company in Mexico. So I did a little bit of contemporary dance before acupuncture. And now I am tapping into I've always been into healing, but in a different capacity now, and maybe tapping into more energetics and channeling and things like that. So maybe trying to come home to my own truth and be able to speak it and share it and be in community with other people who are also finding their own gifts and their own callings in this lifetime. So, yeah, it's me.
That's beautiful. I think that's very important to come into your own truth and share that. And of course, being in community is very supportive, especially for very gentle souls like ours. The world, it's changing, but the world that we grew up in my opinion, was not very, I don't want to say welcoming, but very supportive of our gifts. And I think our main gift is to feel. And I know that about you, I know that about myself, feel very strongly.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes a bit too much, right? That's not. Um, it is a gift to be able to feel so much and to really experience humanity in a very profound and a deep way in terms of um, understanding. A lot of people don't choose the circumstances that they're in. I would say it's more of like, okay, how do you move through what life circumstances you find yourself in? What stores and what resources do you tap into for that to be able to for life to be able to unfold? So yeah, I think it's important to live in life with a lot of compassion and a lot of room for understanding, because people go through a lot on a daily basis. And yeah, so trying to always kind of keep an open mind and a compassionate heart to understand people and what's going on with their lives. Because we all
Yeah,
hold so much.
we really do. Before we started recording, you mentioned some of your fears, I guess, and that they might be from a previous experiences. And I think there is a lot of that, and previous experiences don't have to be, they could be past life thing, could be generational, could be ancestral, all of it. And I believe we're at the point where there is so much healing that needs to happen for, like you said, for the life to unfold and for us to thrive. I think it's enough of suffering in the world. And for me, it's important right now with what I'm doing to support people in that way. Will you share with us what's your vision for the world that we are creating?
I think my vision for the world is a world where there is more love, there is more kindness, there is more freedom, there is more choice. Because I think in a lot of people's lives, those things, especially maybe freedom and choice, are not things that people know they have access to or feel that they have the right to. So I think in my work right now, as it is unfolding, is to inspire love, inspire joy, inspire freedom, inspire choice. And I think those things are, it's belief systems, it's historical roots, it's generational trauma. Like there are so many things that contribute to people, might not feel or act in ways that they express their freedom or feel like they can express their freedom or have choice or feel that love is powerful enough to stand in and live in, or joy. There's so many complexities into why those things might feel so far away. And I want to kind of change that. I want to be part of the community or the humanity that's looking at how can we change that? Because that's a certain narrative. I mean, how do you change the narrative that's there? To be kinder, love, pro joy, pro choice, pro freedom. To,
How can we do that individually, on a personal level?
I think for now, what I think is important is belief, a sense of believing against all odds in the things that feel so maybe cliche or so unattainable or so just so rudimentary, so basic, I think it's creating spaces for joy to be there, for love, and reaching out beyond our own confines of fear or whatever it is that we feel is like that barrier, just reaching out behind beyond that barrier and expressing something and doing something, whether it's calling that friend that you've been wanting to call for a very long time but you haven't because maybe something happened between you, but just having the courage to just go beyond and change whatever it is, perception, belief that you have in yourself. Me personally, I think, yeah.
I think curiosity, yesterday in a conversation with somebody that came up, curiosity. We've all so used to live in a certain way, think in certain way, doing same things. And like you said, these basic things of love, of joy, of freedom seem so cliche to us. We've been so desensitized, back to our conversation about feeling. I feel like we've been so desensitized that these absolutely noble concepts feel trivial to us, when in fact there is so much power in them, so much wisdom, so much medicine in them.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I come from an African background. I am African. And these past 2 years, I've been doing a bit more research and a bit more. I've been traveling back to Kenya, where it's my homeland, and then I've also been to South Africa as well, and spending time with family, but also spending time with traditional sangomas who are very they have a place, they not maybe a place, but they're known in South Africa. Like that is a way, that is a career path, whereas in some other African countries that is not necessarily recognized, not even nationally, not even in any way. So it's been really interesting to spend time with sangomas, but also spending time in Africa in general, in Kenya and in South Africa, and spending time with different people and seeing different lifestyles. And I think what it's reminded me is that life is very difficult for Black people, for the history of Blackness, and but despite that, people find ways to live life in a way that still has place for joy, still has place for love, still has place um for all these things. Whereas if you look around, what the world is telling you is that you really shouldn't exist, or if you do exist, you exist in a certain way. But you find these pockets of people sharing a meal together, or laughing together, or sharing a story that has been passed down for such a long time, or braiding one another's hair. And it's so simple. And it seems like we've kind of lost touch with the simplicity of life in a way in the West, where it's like, it's really those moments of connecting to each other in a simple way that we really make life beautiful. And so it's been a really good reminder for me to, it's the simplicity. It's not so complicated, but we're very good at complicating things.
Yes, 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 yes. We do that. We do that. I want to hear more about your experience in Africa. How did it feel? Remind me, how long have you lived out in the West, in the States, in Europe?
Yeah. So I lived until I was 10 in Kenya, and then I moved to the States when I was 10 until 2 years ago. So about almost in total, almost 20 years that I lived here in the States. And then not just in the States, I was also in Mexico for a period of time, and I was traveling in Central America. So that was a total of about maybe 3 years or so. But my time in Kenya and my time in South Africa these past 2 years have been a time of decolonialization, in a way, a time of really letting go of a lot of things that are sort of like programming of what you think life is about, whether it's you need to make a certain income, you need to have buy a house, buy a car, all these things. Like there's a program of how your life should run. And being in back home has been a kind of a deprogramming for me. It's like that clearly does not work for everyone, and it's not attainable for everyone. So how can we live in a world that respects different viewpoints? How can we live in a world that can honor and that can inspire equality, but not a capitalistic equality. Like, what does the future look like? Because what is deemed to be like the American dream is not attainable for 80-90% of the world. So clearly the option of living in that dream is, it's very selective. Not everyone can live in that dream. And so it's a matter of like, okay, so what other dreams can exist at this time? What else can we do? Because this is clearly not working. And so it's been a really great time of deprogramming, of rethinking, and of reanalyzing myself and my own belief systems and what I think and how I approach the world. And it's been interesting.
I can imagine. I feel like you grew up with one set of values, and then your teenage years that are very important, right, in the formation of your personality, of your character, and then young adulthood. Those are also very formative years for you to spend here or in the West. The world, I guess, kind of shaped you in a different way, and now it's literally coming home. Coming home to who you really are and to your true values. Because when you mentioned, that American dream and the dreams are not attainable, but now I'm realizing for a lot of people, those are not even their dreams. For me, at least, those were not my dreams. So for me to chase them and then realize, oh, why am I chasing these dreams that are not even mine? And to come back to learning, what are my dreams? What are my values? What's important for me in life? What are my priorities? Is it, like you said, a house and a car? Or is it other life's riches? And I believe the more of us realize it and have this conversation, the more other people will have a choice and have an opportunity to have another example set for them of how life could be and what that could look like, that it doesn't all have to look the same.
Yeah, I agree with you that life doesn't have to look the same. But I think it's also really important not to fall into this savior complex, which is really easy to fall into, I think, once you've lived in it, once you've kind of adopted Western values and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Please let me say that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think we also need to be critical thinkers about what we're consuming and what we believe in all those things. I think what we tend to forget, and I think that's something that I'm learning now, is that everyone has so much capacity for intuition, for connection to spirit, for connection to their own higher self, connection to God, whatever you want to call it. And I think now where I am at this moment is just staying open to different people's versions of truth, because that looks very different than mine. And so I think in that context, I've kind of let go of this idea of like being an inspiration to others. I don't think I need to be an inspiration to others. I think what I need to do is to be open to see how others are leading a life according to what they feel inside is the best thing for them. And just being a witness and being there to be like, oh, that's how you do it. Interesting. instead of thinking of myself as this person who can inspire others, more so take a position of being a witness, which I think has really helped me kind of let go of that idea like I need to be an inspiration. Oh, I'm awake, all these things. Like it doesn't matter because spirit is here for so many people and awakening us in so different ways. And we just need to be present to that in a way that allows us to see how other people are also showing it and are also following their truths in really beautiful and courageous ways. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I agree with what you said. For me, inspiring others doesn't mean that I do some grand things in life and they're like, oh, look at that. For me, inspiring others is for me to be who I am so freely, openly in my truth that others can see that as oh, look how weird she is in her own way, and look how happy she is in her own way, not in a way that what I do, but in who I am, in me expressing my truth freely, openly, joyfully. I would like to know if you've always had this gift, because I believe we all have the abilities to develop the gift of intuition, the gift of spirit flowing through you, channeling, like you mentioned. And I'd like to know, how did you develop it? How did you get it? Did you always have it? Or when did you remember it? Let's put it that way, because I think it's a matter of remembering it.
I think spirit has always been close to me. I remember when I was young, I would have conversations with Jesus. And I would talk to, that was my imaginary friend. I would be sitting and I would be talking to Jesus and telling him about my day and all these things. And, Jesus would come with me in and also having very little fear of the natural world. I remember being young and feeling very at home in nature. In places where, if I think about it now, might have been a bit dangerous because you have really poisonous snakes in Kenya. But I never felt that fear, and that's something I remember. And feeling very connected to nature and the cycles of nature. So I think it's always been a part of me. I think being able to consciously name it started maybe when I was around 16 or so, when I started practicing Bikram yoga and was getting into the yoga space and meditation and all of that. So I think that's when that it became more of like a conscious kind of understanding instead of just this flow kind of thing. And I would say I wasn't really open to the channeling until the last couple of years, and it's really started to come through in a really beautiful way. So yeah, I think it's just a process that has been it's more like me coming to meet myself in a way, and understanding myself. Now we have the language. When I was 4 or 5, we didn't have that language of, oh, we're talking to spirit, or maybe you have that language, or you feel close to nature and the spirits of nature. That wasn't, it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, was your family supportive, nurturing in it, or did they just say, oh, it was child's play, imaginary friends? Yeah.
Yeah, more like that, just imaginary friends. And I don't even think they knew that I was talking to because I don't even think I would mention it to them. It's just like something I did on my own. But I don't think anybody necessarily paid attention to it. now or nurtured it in them.
Why Jesus? Were you of a Christian background?
I
Okay.
mean, it's kind of a very religious. Well, actually, it's interesting. There's a lot of Christianity, but then there's also quite a big Muslim population. But at the time it was growing up, it was a very Christian background, and I still feel close to Jesus as a spirit, but maybe not in the same way as I did 4 or 5.
So now when you channel, do you channel a particular being? Do you channel just from the spirit? Is it... Tell me more about it. How does it happen?
I'm still understanding it myself, and it can be like, so this is exactly what it happens. Sometimes it's my own higher self. Sometimes it's other, what we call ascended masters. And sometimes it's just spirit, like just wisdom from spirit coming through. And um, I love this guy, Lee Harris. Love how he thinks about channeling. It's very grounded, which I think is really important for me. Like, you need to take care of yourself. So I've adopted some of his, like his framework, well, not framework, but just how to think about it, relaxing yourself and asking, okay, what do you have? What message does spirit have for me, and things like that. Um, and then from there, it's just kind of developed into its own thing. Sometimes I'm just doing something, and then I'll be busy working on something, and spirit just comes through and has a message, or I'll think about someone and there's a message for someone. So it's been happening a little bit spontaneous in some ways, and then in some ways it's a bit more structured. And in my writing, it's usually like I'm channeling a message from spirit and trying to use words and use language in a way to make it, yeah.
And how has it influenced or impacted your life as a human?
I think it's a bit challenging, honestly, because there's a gap between spirit world and the physical world, and has grown my faith and my belief in the spirit world and my understanding of it. But at the same time, I feel like there's on my as a human in this lifetime, I do feel there is a bit of uh, a gap between spirit and life, human life, and trying to navigate that to the best of my ability. Sometimes that's been difficult in terms of like the information that I would get sometimes, and I really have no idea how to go about that. What do I say? How do I say that? And it's taking it on my own terms. So taking what I can and being like, I can't deal with that right now. I don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of dealing with this in my own terms. So I think, yeah, there's a bit of a difference between what the spirit world would like to see happen on the planet, or what is possible on the planet, and where we are as humans on the planet, and trying to navigate that distance a little bit with as much grace as I can.
Yeah.
But it's been a beautiful experience. I think it's also helped me foster my understanding of spirit belief and all that stuff. Yeah.
Strengthening your faith.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I think that's very beautiful. And in my experience, well, I think when we have that clarity of mind and heart, when we have that connection with intuition, with spirit, with God, we are all channelers, because that's what we are. We are a vessel, right? And so in everything we do, And however we express ourselves in our life, we are channeling the spirit into this world. Of course, depending on your vessel and on who your life experience shaped you to be, there could be a blockage of that energy flowing in. And then, of course, there could be an interpretation of, and I'm not talking about just, receiving messages. I'm talking about doing whatever we do in life, who we are being, for a career, a profession, a motherhood, a fatherhood, or just in general, how we are as human beings. And I think it's a beautiful way to look at it, as it doesn't have to be something so foreign to us.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's, then again, we're on this journey now as a collective, rediscovering this spiritual aspect of ourselves. So letting that part of us flow a little bit more is probably going to take some time, I imagine, for us to kind of trust and believe it a little bit more.
Yeah. But in your experience, in my experience, just from seeing my friends, people in my surrounding, but also maybe because I'm also on this path, so naturally I'll be surrounded by those people because that's who I'm attracted. But I'm seeing more and more people be inquisitive and be curious and explore these new possibilities of us being not just, a body and bones and skin, but have something deeper inside of us, like soul, spirit. Is that similar in your world, where you notice more and more people waking up to this?
I would say so. I think what you said at the beginning, like curiosity, I think there's a lot of curiosity now um, towards the spirit world. I think so. Yeah, with the people that I commune with, but also just if you look at, you know, on a wider perspective of how much interest there is in things like tarot, how much interest there is in things like astrology, how much interest there is in getting readings and knowing about all these different things. It's really happening that there's this kind of like, there's this collective interest, not just like in my circle, but collective interest to dig deeper, interest in like ancestral healing pathways. People said, like, oh, my grandmother used to be witch. Oh, I wonder if I could do that as well. And so, yeah, I think it's really beautiful to see all of us kind of seem curious about aspects of ourselves that we've forgotten or have been latent. And
Yeah.
it's nice. It's really reassuring. So it lifting up. We're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, this is the changing of times. We are shifting paradigm right now and these gifts, they're nothing new. The channeling and talking to spirit and being intuitive and being a healer, this has been around for ages, since the beginning. And when you mention, talking to nature spirits and being in nature, like, that's the OG religion right there, you know? And I mean, you wrote about running with the wolves. So you know that. And for us to come back to our roots, to come back to basics and to that foundation, although it seems like there is so much happening in the world that's destruction and death and struggling and surviving, at the same time, such a ripe time for us to level up, and to remember these practices of our ancestors, to remember our connection. I find it fascinating. I find it beautiful. And I love, my ego. Like, I love being a part of the movement, because it's a movement, it's a revolution. And it's our evolution. I love that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on on the planet. That's for sure. And yeah, there's this wonderful interest in all these modalities that bring spirit closer to us and amidst all the chaos, right? It's really the phoenix rising, you could say, the ashes of nothing into this beautiful phoenix that can rise, but there are these worlds that are colliding that make it seem like it's darker than it is, and it is a very dark time. It's absolutely a very dark time, but in the midst of all the darkness, it's also a lot of light, and there's a lot of beautiful things unfolding, and warriors, in terms of activists who are uh, speaking up for the rights of others. That's light, or someone pursuing, leaving a career behind to pursue their music uh, endeavor. That's light, someone deciding to um, become another gender because they feel like that's who they truly are. That's light, So there's so much destruction, but there's so many beautiful things happening at the same time, and really, it's tough to be part of it, but I'm really also looking forward to seeing, like, okay, where can this go? Where will this go? Yeah.
And I mean, I believe that we're not, you said like it's tough to be, but you're excited. I know that we are only given what we are capable of. And so for anyone who is waking up to, their own truth, and I know for me, it was very, it's an ego death, because you think you're a certain way, and then you realize you are not. And yes, some things must die for you to, personality wise, some relationships, some jobs, some identities do need to fall away, need to die for you to fully emerge as this being of light, like you said. Do you have any advice, any practical tools, any wisdom for anyone who is starting to walk that path or is already walking it?
Good question. I think first and foremost is that take it at your own pace. You don't have to undo everything to start a new life. Life will take care of itself. It will sort itself out as long as you keep following what feels right, what's kind of calling your attention. Keep following those. And I think the most importantly is just to be open. Be open to it changing a lot as you walk this path, I think that's the most important in journal to remember. It's just, we like to think that there's a place that we're going, that there's a point of transcendence. Each challenge that you go through and you're able to kind of see for what it is a moment of transcendence. There isn't this, I've made it moment. No, it's an evolving path. And there are many points of transcendence, you could say. But just because you've transcended one thing does not mean that you have mastered something else. So you could be having a great time and then having a terrible time. It's okay. It's all okay. And just be open to it not looking like what you think it should. Because I think there's a lot of, it should look like this. I've gone through this. Now it needs to be, it's, no. Just live life. Just be open to life. And that's all you can do. Be open to it and just be aware. And yeah, take it as it comes. There is no zenith. There is no point of ultimate illumination or transcendence. If I could shatter that for a lot of people, I would love to. It's an ongoing process. Yeah.
That is very wise.
Yeah.
That is very wise and very humbling. Very humbling to know and to hear that, because, like you said, and that's the old paradigm of living too, that you gotta get somewhere, that it needs to look a certain way, that once you are, you reach some sort of enlightenment, but then we end up in the same rat race. Is just now we're not racing for material possessions, we are racing for some sort of awakening or some sort of enlightenment, transcendent experience. And I feel like with everything there is a good balance, and there needs to be that balance of surrendering to your path and for the life, like you said, to unfold, and it will figure it itself out. And there needs to be a good balance of you thriving. And I think desire is important for us to experience, but it's an ongoing evolution, and there is really no end to it. And for me, it gets better in a way that it is not as painful to my human self, to my ego self. To me, there is a point of full trust and faith in that this is right now. My life is happening in this exact moment. And in this exact moment, I feel my heart full of having this conversation, of having this platform, this space, of doing the things that I've always wanted to do. And honestly, nothing else matters. Because it really doesn't. Because in the next moment, there will be a new feeling, a new experience, and there will be richness of that experience.
Yeah. And sometimes you just have to live life and understand it afterwards. I think it's really when we're in that process of things feeling good, it's really easy to have a very positive outlook. It's when, you experience some of the more human, mystic, and well, I don't even want to say that, just all aspects of humanity, the ones that have been oppressed, the ones that feel uncomfortable. How do you still hold spirit in those places? And how do you just like, okay, maybe your outlook is just like, fuck it, this sucks. Or maybe it's like, I'm just gonna hold to my faith, right? It's all, don't shun any of it. It's all part of it. There isn't good and there isn't bad. It just is. That's keeping to spirit even in the darkest moments. However you can do that.
Well,
And
that's when it counts the most, really.
Yeah. 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 I agree with that. So
Because it's good to say that, you have trust and you have faith and you are such a, whatever it is, however we identify in our human mind, when things are good, like you said. But then when things happen in your life, challenges, and they continue happening regardless of how much work you've done or anything, things always happen. For me, how can I hold the purity of my heart through all of it and continue having love in my heart, continue being who I am without hardening, without closing, without becoming a victim of the circumstances, without becoming the one who complains or struggles or suffers through all of it. How can I still love life for everything that it is?
And I think it's also okay to forget those things when you're in a hard place. It's also okay to not remember any of that. That does not make it untrue or makes it that you are less than or that you don't live from a hard space. Sometimes you have to momentarily forget or go through things to remember who you truly are. And that's okay. That's also okay. Because it's a learning experience. It's something to foster your understanding of your heart living or your heart centeredness, and there will be times that is challenged, and that's okay.
A beautiful reminder that all of it is, like you said, it's just it.
We struggle a lot, I think. I don't know about you and the community that you find yourself in, but I think sometimes um in this spiritual community we kind of we forget sometimes, or maybe get too carried away, or I don't know how to say it, but life can get difficult, and I'm really not trying to bring the mood down or anything, but it's also part of life, and that's okay. And it's okay to forget all the things and all the training and all the things that we've learned along the way when in that moment. That is also okay. Because you will find it again. Maybe just not in that moment, but you will find it, because hopefully by the time you experience that situation or situations or life, you've acquired enough of space, of positivity, of joy, and all of those things that it will pick you up and remind you of who you are and where you're going and what it is, what you're meant to do in this lifetime. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's accumulative what we do, as long as we keep showing up for ourselves day to day, moment to moment. Is there anything else you want to share that you think is important to be shared right now? Anything that wants to come through you?
A lot of people are feeling very lonely, whether it's in their own awakening processes or in a day-to-day life. You're not alone. You might feel alone, but you're never alone. Nature is always here to connect with. Having the courage, the curiosity to say hello to someone might be the door that opens, that you learn about this person and may open their heart to you. You realize, oh, actually, maybe we come from the same town, or maybe we're struggling to the same thing, or maybe we have the same joys and everything like that. So you're never alone. And the anecdote, I think, of loneliness is the courage to stay open, to connect, for that connection to come. When we're lonely, sometimes we close or something like that. So have the courage to go beyond that closeness and just do something that maybe uh, you don't want to do, like holding a conversation with a stranger or going into the park and just observing the trees or something like that. There's so many people and there's so many opportunities for connection. People want to connect. Have the courage, have the curiosity, be open to do that for other people because they need it as much as you do.
Yeah, I feel that. I do feel that. That's a beautiful advice, and beautiful awareness that there is a lot of loneliness in our world right now.
We're alone. We're alone by ourselves when we could be alone with other people who have the same energetic resonance as us. So
Yeah. I mean, I think being alone and being lonely are a little different. I'm very good at being alone. I'm very good at it. And I love connection. And I love community, and I love meeting new people. There is a little bit of a social media challenge with social media being so easy to have that sense of connection to others without having to make actual contact. And it gives us a false sense of belonging. And I love sharing memes with people on social media. I do find that sometimes it's very superficial in a way that I can't know what's going on through somebody's heart and what they're really feeling and dealing with life with. So, like you said, being out in the real world and connecting with people there is important.
Yeah, it's important for us not to lose that skill of just connecting to each other.
Do you have a good community in Berlin?
I'm trying to form a good community. Yes. I've been fortunate to have met a couple of people that are very extroverted. So to be honest, I have met a lot of people. But also taking the time to really think about what does community mean for me at this time? What does that look like? And trying to build that for myself, but also for community, and I think Berlin is a very interesting place. It's transient in a lot of ways, but you find I think a lot of people who are searching for something, creative people who really want to kind of build life on their own terms, however that can be. So it's a really interesting phase of synergy of coming together with like-minded individuals. I mean, I've never met this many people who are into, maybe like samples and having these in-depth conversations about different topics or, really political at the same time. So you find like this really cool mix of people. And so, yeah, slowly forming community with different people and international, different values, different backgrounds, and yeah, and having the courage to just be like, hey, how are you? What did you do? How did you end up in Berlin? And then you find out about someone who, if I didn't take the chance, I would never know what they were, who they were, and what they were doing. So, yeah, it's teaching me to connect, to be open to connection. And yeah, it's always right there. Spirit is always there, just trying to connect us. But spirit can't do the work for us. We have to do that work, of making those dots.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's exciting time to make new friends, make new connections. I think that's very exciting to get to know different people.
Yeah. And to deepen old connections.
Yes, indeed. If I make my way to Germany one of these days, I'll sure come to meet your friends and you.
It's a very eclectic city. You'll find anything and everything here.
Is there anything that you'd like to finish this conversation of? Any Last words of wisdom, reflections, terms of future memories, in a way, for your future self to remember. Just in general, anything that you want to finish with.
Trust yourself. Trust that your higher spirit, God, the inner knowing, they're always with you. They're not always fucking you. No. Just trust that. It's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Eugenie,
Thank you for
is there
this
anything
beautiful.
Is there anything you would like to share?
Let's see. Well, I'd like to summarize. I think that was such a beautiful conversation. Your presence, your connection, the safety that radiates from you, and which you have always radiated that. But I think there is a deepening that I've experienced in who you are. And it's beautiful to witness that there is more grounded wisdom, grounded in your life experiences and who you are and what you are living right now and where you're going. And it's absolutely beautiful. It was just such a blessing to hear your truth and to see your essence come through so beautifully and radiantly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great experience. And I'm looking forward to how this podcast keeps unfolding and your journey with it and where it brings you and all the wonderful people I know that you're gonna be interviewing and sharing space with, and I'm really looking forward to the blossoming of this podcast with you.
Thank you.
And hi, peace.
Thank you so much.